Howdy y'all, and hello all. Welcome back to O State All Day. The Revenge Tour officially starts now, as we prepare to head to Waco, Texas to take on the Baylor Bears. For all orange-blooded, bleeding Americans out there at this very moment, we're all pumped. We're all excited. This day couldn't have come soon enough. Having the bye week where we had it is not ideal, right? Usually, you want your bye week to end up somewhere in the mid to later half of the season, because you traditionally use your bye week to recover from some injuries, get some guys healthy, make some adjustments, rearrange some things to make sure that all the pieces fit before you close the back half of the season going on to the conference championship game. Okay? So not ideal, but the one benefit in this scenario is it does give us a little bit extra time to prepare for Baylor. And if you watched the Big XII Championship game last year, this is the game we want. This is the game we've been looking for. I hope we show up ready to roll, and I really think that we will. Coming off of a bye week, Gundy has an impeccable record. Again, bye week's a little earlier than you want, but if you're going to get prepared for a defensive line and an offensive line to this caliber, I do think the bye week is going to be advantageous for us. I say that only because if you're a fan of football, you're probably going to watch this game regardless of who you cheer for. Simply because the battle of the trenches this Saturday is going to look a lot like what you see when you have Georgia and Bama going up against each other. Am I saying that both of us are better than Georgia and Bama? No, I'm not. What I am saying, though, if you look down in the trenches, which is traditionally speaking where the SEC makes its bread and butter per se, right? The average size player on the line in the SEC and the average size player in the line in the Big 12 used to be a huge discrepancy. Over time, with Gundy's success, and even Aranda's, they've had the capability and ability to recruit guys in the trenches that could go to the SEC all day, every day. So this weekend, in particular, if you're somebody that's interested in how down and dirty it gets in there, it's going to be a fun one to watch. You know, traditionally speaking, we all like watching the Tyreek Hill Ferraris of the world. And yes, it was very fun to watch him go past everybody and Taylor Cornelius just chunk it deep over and over and over because he's Tyreek Hill. We have a little bit of that in Braden Johnson. Now granted, nobody's Tyreek Hill. He's proven that in the NFL. But we've got a couple Ferraris. One thing that I found very similar between both of us is the propensity to spread it out to the wide receivers, okay? So Braden Johnson is averaging right on 100 yards a game for Oklahoma State. We've played 3 games, and he has 300 yards. We all knew that he was fast. He's somebody that kind of got stuck in the depth chart behind the James Washingtons and the Tylan Wallaces of the world, right? But the speed was always there. We did see glimpses of him sophomore year, junior year, and then he dealt with quite a few injuries that basically, from what I've been told, almost took the game away from him. He was able to not only battle back, but you've heard coaches talk about, or even people in general, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Braden got to experience that, right? He knew that he liked the game of football, but he was able to develop the love for not only the game, but the work that you put in during the week to prepare for the game. So he's a big one to watch. And Baylor had to replace a large portion of their back half of the defense. Now, we had to replace quite a few guys as well, but the guys that we had replacing them, other than Kendall Daniels, who we'll get to, had quite a few snaps. It's not like they weren't getting on the field very often, especially from the DB secondary position. Linebacker at both of these teams is going to be something to look out for. Baylor's leading tackler, ironically enough, kind of threw me for a loop a little bit because their leading tackler is actually a safety, Al Walcott. Now, if you put on the film, there's a reason why he has most tackles, but typically you're going to have your top guy as a linebacker. Perfect example for us last year was Malcolm Rodriguez, who everybody knows how he's doing with the Lions, and Devin Harper, who's faring pretty well down in Dallas. Okay, so we're replacing those two spots. Everybody knew that was going to be a little bit of an issue coming into the season, but I do think that Mason Cobb out of Utah has done a very, very good job filling in that role. And then if you put tape side by side from last year, Malcolm Rodriguez, and this year Mason Cobb, one similarity you'll see is the read and react. The read and react for both of those is almost instantaneous. So Mason Cobb has been a major bright spot for this season at a position that we thought we could potentially struggle. Now, again, replacing the caliber of Harper and Rodriguez isn't going to happen overnight. It isn't going to happen by one person or two people. It's going to be a collective effort. So you've seen us sprinkle in our linebackers quite a bit. Our rotation there is pretty significant, especially for that position. Both squads have rotational capabilities on the defensive line. One number that surprised me for both was the sacks, right? Because Siaki Ika at Baylor, number 62, he's a flat-out beast. Mike Gundy, in an interview the other day, talked very, very openly about how he will be starting on Sundays in the NFL if he continues with this trajectory. And I think Gundy is spot on with that one, because if you look at some of the film from last year and this year, regardless of who's lined up across him, whether he's shading in a gap, it didn't matter. He was always pushing people a yard to 2 yards back every single play, almost like clockwork. So defeating him one-on-one, probably not going to happen. So realistically, you kind of have to try to set up some double teams or have the running back chip and go out to the flats. That's about the only way that you can slow him down, but you don't typically have a lot of chipping going on in the middle. Usually you reserve that for closer to the tackle spots, but we might have to get creative this game to contain him, because you can't double team him really, because right next to him you have All-American Tulsa transfer Jackson Player. That 1-2 combo is probably the best in the NCAA. Definitely best in the Big 12. Both players will end up playing on Sundays. And across from them, our offensive line has looked pretty good, but definitely not dominant. Definitely not so good that you have no concerns coming into this game. Where I do think that Oklahoma State has the edge is going to be on the ends. Our defensive end rotation, I believe, is definitely top in the country. Colin Oliver, freshman, All-American last year. If you watch the Bedlam game, he had a massive game. Him and Devin Harper went crazy during Bedlam, and his sack to basically end the game sealed it up for us. He hasn't been as productive as last season, statistically speaking, but that's because every team that we've played thus far has done everything they could to counterbalance that strength. And with this game, it being strength on strength, it'll be interesting to see how they play us and we play them. Now, one thing I found pretty cool, and listening to not only Mike Gundy's interviews, but a couple of Dave Aranda videos, they have a massive amount of respect for each other. So I think it's potentially fair to say this might be the new budding rivalry of the Big 12, just based off of success. Because when Oklahoma and Texas leave, let's just call it like it is, for how many games we've won, how amazing our bowl record is, the stub in our toe in Bedlam on a semi-regular basis, it's very frustrating. So who's going to be the new crown bearer moving into the new Big 12? If Cincinnati can keep Luke Fickell, they're going to have a say in the equation. UCF has Malzahn, who's a big-time coach, and they obviously have the resources. They have the biggest student enrollment population as well, so they're going to have the financial capabilities to compete. Houston, they're paying Dana Holger some big boy money. So if he doesn't win the American this year, he might be, dare I say, on the hot seat. But Houston has obviously shown their capabilities, and they're in a recruiting hotbed. If you look at the rosters of OU and Texas, and even us to some degree, Tech typically recruits out of the DFW area, but anywho, you're going to see a lot of Texans, all the way across the board in the Big 12, especially with those schools I just mentioned. So from a recruiting perspective, this game is going to be very even. From a talent perspective, it's going to be very even. We're replacing a few in the back end of our defense. They're replacing a few in the back end of their defense. Their running back moved on to the NFL. Our running back moved on to the NFL. They decided to retain Blake Shapen as the starter, and they let Bohannon go off to South Florida, and he's having a fairly decent season, so good for him. That move right there gained Dave Aranda a massive amount of respect, which is going to help in recruiting, because what is pretty standard when you have two really, really good quarterbacks is you do everything in your power to hang on to both of them, because in this sport, injuries are going to happen, especially when you have quarterbacks who like to take off, as both of us kind of do. Spencer more so than Blake Shapen, but Blake Shapen does have deceptive wheels behind him, so when he needs to take off, he can be productive. But one area that they separate themselves in is we both run kind of a wide zone to a split zone running concept, which means we're both trying to get people to shift, and then our running back is designed to find the cutback lane, right? So they do a little bit more of a stretch the field to get vertical. We like to mix it up a little bit, and I think that is because Spencer keeps it a lot more than Blake Shapen does. When Blake Shapen does his RPOs, he doesn't keep it all that often, but he is deceptively fast enough that when he does keep it, he can be productive. So it may be something that you have to manipulate the defenses to try to show a man, go to a zone with a spy, something to that effect, because he can take off. Ironically, I do think that they shifted from Bohannon to Blake Shapen to extend the passing game. And you can't really say that they've kept the offensive play calling vanilla, because they had a big game against BYU that didn't go their favor. So the fact that he only has 5 20-plus yard plays this season, to me, is slightly concerning if I were a Baylor fan. Now, could they have been holding some bullets back in the chamber for this game? Potentially, but highly doubtful, because they were down in the BYU game, and they would have had to empty some of the tank just to try to catch back up. So they have more on film than we do, which does give us an advantage. Plus, you factor in the extra time to kind of prepare for them, because we're at our bye week, although the bye week came earlier than it should, but that's neither here nor there. If you look at it from outside the trenches, from a wide receiver perspective, I already kind of alluded to the speed we have with Braden Johnson. Everybody knows Brendan Presley. We've had the running game be kind of stalled out, okay? Dominic Richardson is a very good tailback. He honestly is. I think that he gets caught up in between trying to figure out whether he should run somebody over a juke, because he's more of a physical back, but he does have the ability and capability to get shifty. On the other side of the equation, if you've been watching Baylor, that freshman Richard Reese, he's good. He's really good. He's going to be a good one. But again, I think it's going to come down to the trenches. We both spread it around a lot. So we have Braden Johnson that has the 300-yard mark, right? But we still spread it out quite a bit. Brendan Presley's right around the 160-yard mark. John Paul Richardson's right around the 140-yard mark. And they have very, very similar statistics when it comes to their wide receivers as well. So both of us obviously like to spread the ball around. I do think they have an advantage in the tight end area, because Ben Sims, he is not only good, but he's definitely going to end up in the NFL. He's a big body. He's leading them in receptions. He's got a little over 100 yards. He's their main red zone target. Something that we were trying to emphasize in the offseason was having somewhat of a comparable playing style, which you will see that we do, right? Our playing styles on both sides of the ball are fairly common. The talent level on both sides of the ball is fairly even, which is why this has been a good game the last few years. Dating back to 2020, Baylor had a COVID season, they had a lot of crazy stuff going on, and they won 2 games, and then the next year won 12 games. So I don't think the COVID 2020 season really has much of a bearing on them from a personnel standpoint, coaching standpoint, or a statistical standpoint. So basically, let's just compare last year and this year. From last year and this year, there's a lot of commonalities. Okay, I already mentioned their two big guys. Now, and I mentioned Colin Oliver. Another guy to watch is number 94, Trace Ford. He showed a lot of promise a couple years ago, dealt with multiple ACL injuries on both knees, and I guess there was some trepidation when he originally came out to practice, but he's loosened up. He feels a lot better. Now Gundy says that he's going at 100 miles an hour. He's great to watch. Our top-rated NFL guy coming into the season is Tyler Lacey. They've shifted him in the middle a little bit more to free up some of the pass rushers we have on the outside. Because we also have Ben Kapinski, who has 2 sacks. So you're trying to find a way to filter in all the defensive end and keep everybody fresh because we're so deep at that position. So aside from Tyler Lacey kind of shifting in the middle, you also have Sione Asai. He's going to be somebody that's going to have a massive game here as well. Again, the trenches in this one's going to be fun. The difference, I think, might be the run game. We've given up like 160 yards a game rushing, something to that effect. And they've only given up 80 yards a game. So something's got to give there. Reese is a beast. But with the extra time to prepare, I do feel confident in our ability to shut down the run game. Their quick passing game has been very, very efficient. I think that's kind of where Blake Shapen has made his money this year, which has kind of been our nemesis because the teams we've played have tried to find a way to take out the ability to get to the quarterback. If that's your specialty, and if you know good and daggone well, if I hold the ball for longer than 3-4 seconds, it's a done deal. And that's for both sides. Spencer is a little bit more elusive than Blake Shapen, but Blake Shapen, again, has that ability. The spreading the ball around is going to be even, so I think it does come down to that rushing. Are we going to be able to slow their run game down? Because statistically, it looks like we're going to have a hard time running the ball. And that hasn't been our specialty so far this season any daggone ways. So that could be a major determining factor. Another thing that caught me off guard was time of possession. We're averaging 24 minutes a game, and we're giving up about 34 to 35. So if our offense is kind of the catalyst for leading us this season, the time of possession in this game, I think, is important. And the only thing that scares me is the fact that they've only allowed 80 rushing yards a game, and we haven't been hyper-focused on rushing. Just like Gundy said in his interview recently, they're probably going to play their safeties pretty deep because they're very well aware that if we take the top off the defense, we're going to have a good day. They're going to have a long day. So they're probably going to play back quite a bit. So they're going to give the little stuff. They're going to give the underneath routes. They're going to give the seam routes. They're going to give that stuff to you, but they're going to make you take care of the ball, understand your assignments, protect the quarterback the right way. You got to be on your P's and Q's when you play Baylor because Dave Aranda is a phenomenal coach who does a very good job in preparation. Again, this bye week is going to be a big deal when it comes to the outcome of this game. So, other than Blake Shapen, other than Spencer Sanders, other than the wide receiver group, we covered the differentiation kind of between their leading tackler on defense. Our leading tackler is Mason Cobb. I do expect, as the season progresses, for Xavier Benson to get that first quick step that Mason and Malcolm have. He reads pretty good, but his reaction time is it's a little bit different than Cobb's. It's a little bit different than Malcolm's. But so is Nick, and so is Lamont Bishop. So somebody has got to stand next to Cobb and be able to read and react as quickly as he can. And if we have the ability to end up doing that, it's going to be a fun season. It's going to be a fun season regardless. The Big 12 this year is loaded. Unfortunately, there used to be a couple gimme games. That's not the case this year whatsoever. I highly doubt that any team from the Big 12 goes undefeated. That would be awesome, because it would be our first time since 1945 and only the second time in our history. So that would be great. But the talent across the board is ridiculous this season, and everybody can point to Kansas as, the big gold star as to how. And last year, David Aranda gave that blueprint to Kansas. By the way, he turned around a 2-win team, took them to a 12-win team that won the Big XII Championship. This thing is going to get wild. It's going to be intense. It's going to be fun. This might be, like I said, one of the budding rivalries to come. I think the most natural rivalry for us moving forward is going to be Tech. Texas Tech and us share a lot of similarities. There's been an ongoing joke for a long time that Tech invented X, Y, and Z. Tech invented the touchdown. Tech invented playing good. Tech invented losing, so on and so forth. It's just a little joke between Oklahoma State fans and Texas Tech fans. Both of us use the guns up. Both mascots have weapons. So that might end up being the top rivalry. But from a talent perspective and success over the last decade, Baylor and Oklahoma State clearly are going to lead the way. And matter of fact, both of us are far and away above Tejas. OU has been the thorn in the side. We finally were able to kick that bugaboo this last season. We cannot wait to go to Norman this year to do it again, especially in their home. They obviously showed that they have some weaknesses, because Kansas State looked absolutely dreadful against Tulane, and then they turn around and Adrian Martinez looks like he should be at least on the top 10 for the Heisman list, right, from one game differentiation. So the Big 12 is crazy this year. This is going to be, up to this point, the best game in the Big 12 thus far, hands down, no questions asked. The Texas game, that was pretty fun. It was a daggone shame to see that Tech fan at the end of the game push that Texas player. Guys, don't be that guy, right? And if your friend might be that guy, police that guy. Because having things happen like rushing the field, if you haven't experienced it, it's fun. Now, as a grown man with only one leg, I don't think I'll be hopping onto the field anytime soon. But I was fortunate enough as a kid in high school, college, growing up in the Stillwater area, to jump on the field multiple times. And storming the court at Gallagher is epic. I've heard the Fog is a little bit higher up on the list than GIA with KU success. It very well may be. That's on my bucket list this year, is to get to a game in the Fog. I also want some KU fans that haven't been to GIA to go experience a game in Gallagher. Anywho, what I think this game boils down to is going to be time of possession and which team can rush the ball better. I do think that they're going to test us deep because they haven't had the propensity to do a lot of that this season. So I think, kind of kicking us back on our heels a little bit to throw us off our game could be something you see fairly early. If we shut it down, it'll turn into a slugfest. If we end up going home run for home run, which I don't necessarily see happening, it's going to be wild either way. Whether it's an SEC-style 7-10 game, which is possible, or if both of us get hot, because that Reese kid is talented, and I do know they have a receiver that they're very, very high on, Monterey Baldwin. I watched the game the other day. He had a couple drops, but he reminds me a lot of Brennan Presley. So, again, the similarities all across the board are going to be absolutely phenomenal to watch. Again, if we can control the run game and our defensive line can get over the woes of how talented their O-line is, I think we get the dub in Waco, especially with the little bit of extra time to prepare. I expect Spencer Sanders to have a phenomenal game. He's a little bit of a riverboat gambler, but at the same time, he's been in the offense for so long. Gundy's even said they just throw him the keys and tell him to do his thing. Which I've never, ever heard Gundy say that, not even when we had Whedon. I don't even think he said that verbatim when we had Mason Rudolph. So the fact that he has that much faith in Spencer, coupled with the success that Spencer started off the season with, I feel pretty confident. I do feel pretty confident. What scares me is the run game. We've got Dom, Ollie Gordon, true freshman, 4-star from Texas. He looks like he could be the guy moving forward. Jaden Nixon, he's got a little bit of shiftiness to him. DeAndre Jackson transfer from Texas A&M. He's like 5'11", 220. So he's kind of in the Jalen Warren bowling ball, zone cutting scheme type of physicality player. So it's going to be fun to watch. And I do think that we do have a couple of arrows in our bag that Baylor hasn't seen, because DeAndre Jackson has been waiting on some transcript issues and a transfer from A&M. Don't know exactly, but it seems as though it's been worked out. And coming into this season, Braden Johnson was kind of an unknown because of his injury. So other than Brennan Presley, everybody was focused on Jaden Bray. As a true freshman last year from Norman, that feels good to say, true freshman from Norman last year, he showed that ability to potentially carry that Rashawn Woods, Des Bryant, Justin Blackman, James Washington, Tylen Wallace torch. He looks to be that guy, and he hasn't played yet this season because he hasn't needed to for the most part, but he had some kind of injury he's healing up from. Gundy said the other day that he's going to be practicing this week, so it looks like all signs are he's going to be a go. So watch out for 85 Jaden Bray. I expect Green to have a big game opposite of him. I expect our running backs to perform well. I expect our D-line to do well. The secondary, I'm curious to see kind of what happens, because if they run that zone wide stretch to perfection, then Xavier Benson and Mason Cobb and Lamont Bishop and Nick are going to have a rough day. So they might try to exploit us deep. They're obviously going to try to exploit our linebackers in that cutback running scheme. So it's just going to come down to the trenches, y'all. So whether you're a fan of the fast, fun Ferraris of the world, or you like that old SEC slugfest down in the trenches, this is the game in the Big 12, up to date, to watch. And I do expect the viewership to indicate that as well. The game time it's stupid, right? How do you have the two potentially best teams in the Big 12 that played for the Big 12 Championship last season at a midday kickoff? I guess Gundy likes it. He says 2:30, 3 o'clock is like normal football hours, which is fine. But, everybody knows night games is when it gets wild and crazy. Night games add a little bit more to the atmosphere because people have had all day to get their beer pong on and then cheer on their team late into the night. So it adds another element that I thought we would get here. Obviously we're not, because kickoff is in mid-afternoon. But nonetheless, it's going to be a phenomenal game. My score prediction, 31-24, O State in Waco to move us to 4-0, put us in the driver's seat in the Big 12 moving forward. Will we see Baylor again? Again? We very well might. But until next time, guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, find your way to the finger vacation section on the share button, hit the comments section in the comments below, tell me what you think about the game, give me your score prediction, give me some players that everybody needs to watch out for that I may or may not have missed. That's it. Go Pokes, beat Baylor, God bless.